This program is proudly brought to you by the Peel Dance Bar, corner of Peel and Wellington Streets, Collingwood.
G'day, it's blah blah blah, it's Monday night, and yes, it's Easter Monday, and I'd like to thank the crew at Inverloch for the e-hunt, which I think means Easter e-hunt, but we'll just leave it there. It was a wild time. Hello, we're talking about religion or other and religion, we're not really too sure. Where's this typical blah 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 show goes 3 segments, 15 minutes. We're at the Peel, of course, because it's a Monday night, and we're always here on a Monday night because we haven't got lives. I'd actually like to start introducing our guests. They're pretty wild and varied, and starting right over on the far side from me is this man called Kkrraba. Now, Kkrraba is a Chinese temple priest. He's an ex-Catholic. Now, is that a reaction, to become a Chinese temple priest?
No, when I was 8 years old, we came to Melbourne, and I said, I'm not going to the church. I was like, I've got to go to church. I'm not going. The people aren't nice there. So my inner heart space was about spirituality, is about effectively being nice and being connected. And when we came to Melbourne from a country town, the church had no sense of warmth or connection. So at 13 I started meditating, started with TM, and then I was on my own spiritual track in reality.
Well, we'll get into Kkrraba's little mind trip later. But look, next to Kkrraba, of course, we've got Drew. Now, we all know who Drew is, that little bit of street trash, ex-fundamentalist, ex-Assembly of God, Brethren, every drug in the world, and he just bashes Catholics.
I said schooner, Graeme, not Stolly.
But whatever it is. Anyway, welcome back. I'm glad you had a nice time on your property over Easter, you little rich capitalist. Yeah. Now, the very Reverend, because I just like the concept of very, Reverend Heather Creighton from the Metropolitan Community Church, who's an ex-Anglican. Now, you run a church that's full of disgusting homosexuals and lesbians, don't you?
Not all of them, majority of them, yes.
So this is a bit of a takeover, a little breakaway kind of thing?
No, not really. We just believe that God loves all of us.
But hang on, aren't you those fundamentalists from America? Aren't you some American little bunch of people as well? Didn't it start in America?
It started in America, you remember. It started in America, yes, and it's all over the world now. We have churches all over the world. And most of the congregation are people who have grown up in fundamentalist churches, who have found nothing there for them, as we heard, and have come and found in MCC that family and that community that they've been looking for, and the faith that they can follow and believe in a God that they want to believe in, not what they're ordered to believe in.
Heather, that was good. I'm nearly sucked in. I'm not there yet. I may just become a Christian or some other weirdo kind of Buddhist like Dave Trueman. Now, Dave, you're a Buddhist.
I am indeed.
You're big enough for that Buddhist image.
I knew that cheap shot was coming from.
Absolutely. Now, what kind of Buddhism do you follow?
Well, I don't see Buddhism as a religion. I see it as a life philosophy and follow it as a life philosophy. I personally, as a gay man, found that all the conventional churches that existed in the Western country, like Australia, had nothing to offer me as a gay man. Most of them have, no matter which way you put them up, and with due respect to the others present, they all prohibit homosexual acts, and they say so. Buddhism is one of those that has and never has had any prohibitions on same-sex acts.
Hang on.
Same-sex acts.
Dalai Lama.
Yes.
Buddhist?
He is.
In his teachings, he writes this whole routine, very similar to the Christian Bible, of, anti-homosexuality stuff. Now, he's a Buddhist leader.
He's also the Tibetan Buddhist leader, a particular sort of Buddhist.
So what's the difference between Eastern Orthodox and the Catholics in Rome? It's just, you know what I mean? It's like...
Again, my response to that is that I'm my type of Buddhist and follow it as a life philosophy, not as a fundamental religion with leaders who tell me what to do.
Fair enough.
Right. So some being told what to do. Well, I'm with you. I could probably join your religion. Now, the famous McGregor, you're an ex-Catholic. You spend most of your time bashing that man that unfortunately lost only a month ago. Where did he start in Sydney?
I think it's he's got a little while to go. They've got to sort of mobilise their forces to prepare for him. I heard him described as the new rainbow warrior, and I think that's hilarious. I also, there was a wonderful profile of him in The Age a couple of Saturdays ago, in which, yes, apparently he's associated with a group of gay clergy called the Spice Girls. Well, I don't know, I better not say they spice up his life, but that's the name that they've been given by other priests within the Catholic Church.
So allegedly,
yes, allegedly. Yes,
so this man that's taken over this next Cardinal of Australia hangs around with poofters?
Allegedly.
So is it a possibility that the courts have proven, allegedly, that the majority of poofter bashers tend to be closet homosexuals themselves, allegedly?
That is a theory.
That is purely a theory.
It's almost proven about 84% legally, just to bring in a clear legal perspective.
Allegedly.
No, that's more proven. The other one's alleged.
And therefore, the man that bashes us, who is could possibly, allegedly be the next Cardinal of Australia, could be hanging around with a bunch of fags called the Spice Girls, and allegedly could be a poofter basher according to the 84%
allegedly
figure.
falling into the factual part of 84%. He could allegedly fall into that factual part. Yes.
What about the Ballarat allegations?
Allegedly. Look, we don't want to bash we don't want to bash Catholics, but we're being tired of being bashed internally. See, I actually don't see our enemy as heterosexuals. I don't see our enemy as secure people that are happy about their sexuality and have got a big picture of the world. You've heard this, Ray, before. I see our enemy is within. Now, whether it be people of religion who are bashing us and saying we're not equal in the eyes of God, or whether it be commercial entrepreneurs that won't let nasty pierced chicks in, and I agree, but we'll go back to that one. They are our enemy, not the exterior. That is purely my view, allegedly. Paul Martin. Paul Martin. Now, you allegedly were a sicko. Now, what's this Exodus thing you used to be?
Well, Exodus is a group of fundamentalist Christians, and they say that basically homosexuality is a sin. And back in those days, it's an international organisation based in America, and they basically say that if you get a lot of counselling with the Holy Spirit, which is an unusual concept, and stuff like that, that you can actually change your orientation. And this big queen runs it, who's the campus person I've ever seen in my whole entire life. And it's saying something.
Is that why you became the Australian leader?
Well, it was one of the reasons. I camped it up and that got me in, so it was pretty easy to do. Yeah, so I became a leader of that for a couple of years with a lesbian friend of mine who's now in a long-term lesbian relationship. So it's very successful, I must say.
So, Paul, you failed and you're a psychologist as well.
That's
and you
the
also
one.
counsel Catholic nuns and priests.
Mainly priests, yeah. Counsel a lot of Catholic priests, mainly gay people, but I have, for some reason, for years, I've also had a lot of Catholic priests in the books.
Well, we'll be interested.
They've got their own group, you know. The Catholics have got their own
What's
group
that?
comparable to Exodus called Courage.
Courage, and what's courage about?
Oh, well, take courage, you know, fight this, be celibate, sort of garbage.
Oh, I'm a great believer.
So they're not
believer.
saying so much don't have a sexual...
It's encouraging the gay or lesbian Catholic to fight against their carnal desires.
Good, because I was at Throb a couple of weeks ago at the Peel, and I was fighting against it all night.
Very successful.
I failed as well.
What's the difference between Exodus and the Salt Shakers?
Salt Shakers sounds quite painful. I'm not sure about that one.
Salt Shakers.
You're more familiar with them too.
Oh, look, I know the enemy, believe me. The Salt Shakers is a group of, a group of
not to be sued, of course,
fundamentalist.
Peter.
I think they're Baptists.
Are they?
Extra special.
And they've been bombarding government and stuff
And
with
stuff
all
like
of
that.
their...
So you've got the Salt Shakers that think they can change us, Courage think they can change us, Exodus think they can change us.
All in Melbourne.
Right?
All
Does it all happen in Melbourne?
All in Melbourne, when we were complete failures. Now, Michelle, you're a Hindu.
Well,
You've hung around India for too long, you're a little Hindu lesbian with all those piercings.
I'm not actually. I have to say that I'm extremely cynical about organised religion, and I'm also, I've found that in my experience of religion, I've had a very religious upbringing and my own separate experience that it basically oppresses freedom, personal freedom about what you think about yourself and stuff like that. But I have adopted quite a lot of Hindu practices, but I can't say that I'm a Hindu.
Okay, just because you're a vegetarian. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Jan. She's another Melbourne Community Church, Melbourne Metropolitan Community Church, one of these takeovers. So you'll be attacking this one, won't you? Jan Miels. Miles? Miles. Now, you're a member of the church. What made you become a member of that disgusting American homosexual church?
I've been a member since 1979, but I wafted it on and off because of the internal fight between my own spirituality and organised religion. And I had to come to the realisation that you carry your spirituality all the time, but you go to church on Sunday to give rather than to get, even though you do get, and by giving you do get.
So you don't take the money out of the bowl like that?
No, but I wish I didn't have to put it in some days.
Absolutely. So out of the organised religion, you're in an organised religion.
Yes.
Nan's in an organised religion. No, you're not an organised religion at all, are you, Dave? Organised because you're the pastor, the priest, the goddess. There's three organised people in a religion.
I do have practices in my life that I worship.
I don't think smoking...
Don't talk about Club 80 that way. It's not...
But that's, for me, I do things religiously, right? And it's my doctrine, and it's what makes me what I am.
So doesn't that make it your religion?
Well, it does indeed.
Well, I guess that's why a lot of people say football's a religion.
Well, it's true. In cars and football, we should have Lauren on. I'm sorry, Lauren was going to be on the show today, but too many guests turned up, which is very unusual. Because she comes from a Rastafarian religion where they religiously have bongs as well.
Well, that's just a side part of my religion.
It's not the total.
That's how I get enlightened. I think, well, part of it anyway. So that gets me on the path.
Now, we're about to go to a break, but before we go to a break, I actually want to go to Nan, because Nan actually muffed up before and actually mentioned a poem, you anti-Catholic poem. Go on, Nan, very clearly.
When I was a good little Catholic girl, a long, long time ago, we used to recite this, and I think the nuns... Oh, she'd be well and truly dead by now, so she can't rise up and sue me. It goes, Sister Elizabeth is a good nun. She goes to Mass on Sundays. She prays to God to give her strength to wallop the kids on Mondays.
Beautiful. Very touching. Now, are you implying that the Catholic Church is into pain by that?
Well, they wore great big leather belts around their waist.
Oh, kinky.
Yeah. Bit kinky. Some of the kids got the short end of the leather strap around the legs.
We're about to go to a sponsorship break, and we're going to talk about the S&M practice, or BDS, of the Roman Catholic Church. This is blah, blah, blah. It's Monday night, it's Easter. And we're going to come back and talk about religion and other. We're out of here any second. Thanks. See you any minute. This is the second segment. Now, we went out before with a disgusting poem by Nan McGregor, which just, to think we let you hang around under 18-year-old kids. Worries me. This is the woman that got the money, along with a bunch of others, to run these disgusting, drug-free, no smoking, no alcohol events for young lesbians and homosexuals.
Taxpayers' money.
Stole it from the taxpayer, Nan.
Yeah, but they're doing the drag thing, that's all right.
Well, yeah, I'm not too sure about them dressing up and looking like commercial kids, but we'll come back to that one in some other show. We've had a bit of a change in seating because the Hindus gone over the Buddhist, the Eastern and I've got the psychologist Paul with me. Now, it is Easter, it is Easter night, it is been a fantastic time, and those of us that hadn't had car accidents are alive. Just shows that there's no God in my view. If you've had a car accident, you're dead. But anyway, I'm not anti-religion. Jan, now let's talk about the real stuff, because there's Michelle, little pierced Michelle over there, and myself. We don't know nothing about Easter apart from someone died and there was a rock and a cave.
I didn't even know that. That's about it.
Well, no, there's a meaning of Easter. What is it? Some pagan celebration. What is it?
No, it's actually the oldest movable feast. and it's basically the killing, the crucifixion of Jesus and the resurrection on the third day. And basically myself, I'm a Christian basis, but I believe that is symbolism in the Bible, and it's not actually as it's written. The symbolism is that even everyone who's gay and lesbian has been crucified at some stage, and we all rise to become rainbow butterflies by the third day. And
I think you're a hippie girl.
I told you I wandered away and struggled with all this stuff. But I really believe that that's, it's the symbolism that counts in the Bible, not exact words, because we don't know who wrote it.
Well, a bunch of old men sitting around campfires down the docks, wasn't
table,
it?
actually, in a dark church somewhere, I'd say.
Yeah, but then there's quite seriously a movable feast. It's like takeaway food, meals and
Well, it's the only day that actually moves. Like, you can have a public holiday and it's always Anzac Day. But Easter, a Good Friday and Easter Monday always moves because it goes with the equinox, the vernal equinox. It goes with after the full moon. So it's called a movable feast.
So Jesus wasn't crucified a particular day, so it's more based on a pagan festival?
Probably, yes, at that stage.
So
isn't all of Christianity based on pagan rituals that they got scared of and took the
Exactly,
days
because there's an argument that it's actually onto the winter solstice of feminism and spirituality as well.
a feminist festival takeover as well.
Sure,
they've taken over Jesus as well.
They've taken Bench, they've taken religion.
I don't think it's a takeover, I think it's just paying ownership of it. You know, we take whatever part we want of it. Everybody takes whatever part of their Christianity and their spirituality what they want and what suits them and helps them to grow and develop and even get enlightenment if we can.
Now, Heather, Reverend Heather, is one of your flock right in that? Has she learnt well?
It was interesting not answering your question deliberately. You said that this is Easter Monday, and how we in society revolve everything still around the Christian faith. You know, this is Easter, this is Christmas, here tonight, not everybody celebrates Easter. And so therefore we need to look at it as a little bit broader than just for the Christian faith. I think it's a time of celebration, yes. As a Christian and as a member of MCC and leader of the church, we have celebrated and gone through Lent, 40 days of Lent, which we see represents the 40 days that Christ spent in the desert.
And what's Lent?
Okay, I'm just telling you. After Jesus was baptised, he went away for 40 days to be with God and no one else, just with God, and to spend time to search what his life is going to be like. And we, as Christians in modern day, use this Lenten period as a search time, as a time to see where we are with our God, what our life is like, where we want our life to be. Is it going the way we believe God wants our life to go? Now, this is the Christian, okay? So, as I said, people here don't believe, because they come from different faiths, which is the respect that we have for everybody else. Which I know a lot of Christians don't have that respect. Okay, in MCC we do. I believe we do. Easter is a time of after Jesus was crucified, as Jan said. He was buried, and a lot of that comes from, as Jan said, from the pagan, because back in those days there was a lot of ritual stuff happening. There was a lot of pagan stuff happening. There was a lot of
persecution of pagans.
Persecution of people, not just people, women, the sick, the invalids, all those people were third grade, not even second grade. They were third grade, the women weren't allowed into the temple and all those sorts of stuff, which in some religions still happen today. However, this Easter, from a Christian's perspective, is a celebration of life, a celebration of life in Jesus Christ. And our belief is that in the resurrection or the rising of Christ from the dead is our saviour, is our salvation into heaven, is our promise of eternal life if we as Christians follow the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Okay, I want to chuck it to the Chinese temple priest, I want to chuck it to the Buddhist and the Hindu. Do you feel involved in this, welcomed by the Christian churches?
If I throw in my perspective starting Christian per se, right, and people often say to me, "Oh, are you Christian?" Right? No, I say, well, I've got no trouble with Christianity, it's Christians I have the problems with. So to me, if I look at Jesus as a teacher by stuff that is written down and by my own inner connections, we've got a man of basically guts, balls and courage who walked down the street and did the right thing and spoke up for justice and spoke up for whatever. So that's who I understand as the founder of the church. So when people go, oh, Christian and anti-gay and Christian and anti-this, I think, no, we've got Jesus who started it all per se as a man, forgetting the name, it could be Jock Smith. Okay, so forgetting the name, a man of courage, integrity and compassion, and 2,000 years later they fucked it up and turned it into an organisation. And now the churches, what they do is they perpetuate the organisation. If they said to people, be more loving, be more compassionate, be more honourable, they'd have no flock. If they walk in, oh, you've got the right to judge, you can do this, you can do that, they can all jump on the bandwagon. So in reality, I've got a split in the middle of those two. The Chinese temple priest training is about honouring your inner spirit and the spirit of other people and doesn't give you the right to judge or condemn. But there again, neither is Christianity. That's in right. The teachings of Christ. You have to go back into Old Testament. Who is Leviticus? Who are all these people? The people with all these sort of thoughts. They were older tribesmen. That's all they were.
Even, like my thing is, how can you even trust something that's written down and that's what Jesus said? Like, personally, I don't even trust that that's what happened or that's what he said. Yeah, it could be something, he could be a totally fabricated character. And I also think that people do feel things spiritually, so if they feel that, then that's obviously something they've got between themselves and God. But at the same time, who's to say that he was a non-existent person who people wanted to believe in something because society was all gone to shit, and so they created a character. Like, who's to say that whether or not it was true, which is...
The only answer I have for that, and that's to me there is an answer, not about whether he was, say, true or not, is that within terms of temple training and inner kung fu training, it's about respect and deeply honouring your spirit and other people. And when you do that and you look at what was said about the teachings of Christ, and yes, they were written 60 to 300 years later, so yes, that's exactly right. The fundamental stuff the guy said is in fundamental harmony with the base of all religions. So it's like one light up there, a God, a universe, that. And we've got Buddhism and Christianity, Lao Tzu, etc. And up there, if you're looking at the core, they're all the same. Down here, they seem to be very different. And the parts where people argue over shit like whether someone's gay or not gay or whatever is just so far from the core spirituality of any religion that it's just wiped off. It really is. Otherwise, you'd have to accept anti-black, which is in the Old Testament. You'd have to accept not eating pork, which is in the Old Testament. You'd have to accept stoning of women and them not being in church, which is in the Old Testament. So, it's like, if you're going to accept one, accept all the others or just keep out of the picture.
Buddhist view.
Well, I was just going to say is that fundamentally what's being said is that the teachings of Jesus are not inconsistent with most other religions. I'll agree with that. However, he did say a couple of things. He said, obey the laws of your fathers, which relates to the Old Testament. And he also said that he was God. The basic separation of where I have a problem with Christian religions is in the divinity of Christ, is that Christ was both man and both God. From my point of view as a Buddhist, does it as a life philosophy, that God doesn't exist. And certainly no man can be both God and man at the same time. So where I separate from the Christians is this idea that Jesus was both God and man. And secondly, he did make statements about certain things. He said he was God. He was both God and he also said, obey the laws of your fathers. And obeying the laws of your fathers, he was referring to the Old Testament. So we're a part company there.
Okay, now Christians. What do you think of Dave Trueman's analogy? What do you think? Either of you Christians?
Is Buddhist a person or a god?
Buddha is an individual. Buddha is the name given to a particular individual who reached enlightenment. We can all be Buddha, and the word Buddha means enlightenment or enlightened one.
But the person Buddha that we see?
The symbolic representation is a Nepalese prince of 2,500 years ago, who we acknowledge was the first Buddha, was the first to be enlightened.
But people have to believe in that, otherwise they wouldn't rub their tummy and for good luck and pat the head. So
no, that's
they have
Chinese.
A good day. Is that Chinese?
I've got a little greenstone Buddha at home, not patting on the head.
Darling, you'd pat anyone who's a true believer.
Can I say that the Buddhism, from where it started, has taken certain directions, and when it's entered particular countries, and I add peacefully entered these countries, that local customs, local gods, local individual colouring of the original Buddhism has taken place, as it has with Christianity. Both the gentlemen in question, the Buddha and Jesus, probably had a very good idea. When you start leaving it alone with men and women, it seems to get prostituted as it goes along. I think many Buddhists, as many Christians do, seek and look for the fundaments of their religion.
Okay, we're going to come back here. We're about to go to a sponsorship break, and they said commercial, but we're not commercial. And Paul, I want you to analyse these nutters. You're a psychologist. I'm a full-on Marxist. I still believe that it's complete opiate of the masses. I really do. We're going to come back. This is blah blah blah, and we're going to come back, and Paul's going to pick these people to death because I'm not convinced. Seriously, people on crosses, you know, Buddhists praying. I mean, you know, I'm not convinced. Blah blah blah. We're coming back third segment very shortly. We're out for a sponsorship break. G'day, this is blah blah blah. This is the final third segment. We've been talking about religion, other and religion, and of course it's Monday, whatever you call it that time. We just had our Easter eggs or whatever we had. Things we took over resurrection, or someone was resurrected, I don't know who. But listen, we've just been listening to these Christians, these Buddhists, these Hindus, these other wackos, spiritualists, Chinese temple priests talking. Now, as I mentioned before we went to the break, this is Paul Martin. He's a psychologist. He used to try to run this Exodus group in Australia, which was to subvert homosexuals and lesbians into a Christian way of life, but it failed, he failed. In fact, you're all failing, all you people that run those little groups, because we're breeding actually. We're not breeding, we're out getting new members through public broadcasting. Exactly. So don't forget the subscribe-a-thon. If you want us to keep getting more homosexuals, please subscribe. Feed the fish so we can get a permanent licence. Because on Channel 31, we even have fundamentalist Christians, and we think everyone has the right to their opinion. We really do. And we know our fundamentalist Christian brothers and sisters believe we as homosexuals and lesbians and transgenders and, what's the other one? Bisexuals. Not sure about that one. But we have the right to exist on community television as well. Now, Paul, what do you think of these nutters?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think this seems pretty kind of normal and healthy. I've seen Pentecostal Christians in action. You know, it's the most amazing looking thing with hands and everyone throwing down and different tongues. I've been into psychiatric hospitals where people are not allowed out, and I sort of wondered, there's a parallel there somehow. So, yeah, but I think God would be much more real if he's on the internet or something. At least you'd be able to sort of, you know, get somewhere. This great thing is
on the internet.
Yeah, he could be actually. I haven't found him yet.
Well, you've got this fundamentalist background, and you're listening to people that actually accept everybody. So,
well, these guys are not fundamentalists, which is great, and that's the difference. So, people that are fundamentalists say that you know, at the end of the day, so Exodus at the moment, they say, well, look, we're sort of toned it down a bit. We don't think we can actually change people now. We kind of just try and sort of deal with the fact that they're gay and want to be celibate or whatever.
Isn't that an admittance of defeat?
Well, I think so, yeah. But the bottom line, though, is
it's fabulous. We won.
And did that occur after the leader was found in a gay bar?
Oh, look, it's
allegedly.
There's so many people have been through that program. I think it's called Living Waters or something. It's got nothing to do with number ones, but it was this terrible program where there were tapes and there's all sorts of things, and it was so many people failed out of that. It was just amazing. And one of the problems is that I think it's a significant contributor to a lot of suicides.
Absolutely.
And that's where the problem is, because they say that homosexual acts are a sin. And that's where it really it doesn't make sense at all.
It tears people
So,
apart.
so where, in your opinion, where do young gays and lesbians get the notion that they should go to something like Exodus? For example, I've never had that thought that I've got to try and change who I am, even though I have come across homophobia and people not accepting who I am. I've never come across that feeling in myself that I go, oh, what can I do to try and change myself? So what do you think
You're
people...
a pretty balanced person. I mean, I think a lot of people, they grow up to become something they've been taught to hate. And also, apart from that, they're going to roast and their skin will be blistering eternity in hell. You know, so there's kind of this eternal kind of thing to it. And I think that does a huge amount. And if you've got that belief system, if you've been a little kid singing on sermons on endless Sundays, rehearsing smiles and listening to all the bullshit that goes on, it forms a really powerful belief at a very deep part inside of you. So there's always this internal conflict. You know, sort of drawn towards members of the same sex at the same time, knowing that if I do this, I'm going straight to hell, and oh my God, I'm such a sinner, and it means I'm perverted, I'm weak, I'm all these other dreadful things. So it initially alleviates that conflict. It's like, oh, finally, you know, there's an answer there for me. It's going to be okay. I don't have to deal with this internal conflict. The day I decided to give up fundamentalist Christianity for Lent, at the end of it, I went to Thailand, and I thought there are so many millions of these beautiful people out here, and they're all going to hell, except for the 3% who just happen to be in the way of missionaries. And I started thinking, there's something a bit sus about all of this, and so when I started challenging the fundamental theology, which I think is entirely bizarre, I just started feeling the relief that I thought I would get through being involved in this Exodus thing. It's a very powerful experience.
So by them saying that if you give up, I guess, sexual acts versus your sexuality as an identity, so there's just a big bunch of gays and lesbians who aren't having sex who are saying, I'm cured.
This bizarre theory based on this woman, I can't remember her name, but she's like a neo-Freudian. And it's quite bizarre because she says it's through same-sex love deficits as a child. You know, you didn't get the love from the parent of the same gender. So that's why you're eroticising the same-sex love now. Oh. Get it? So simple. I mean, God, I should have thought of that years ago.
And so therefore, people who are heterosexual spend too much time fantasising about their mother. Is that?
Well, you could twist it that way. Yeah, it doesn't seem to work in reverse.
It must also work in reverse. If that theory is correct, it must also work in reverse. And it doesn't.
Well, it's quite bizarre. Of course, the way of dealing with that then is to develop these healthy, deep, long-lasting relationships with members of the same sex, a non-sexual, non-erotic. But of course, how many times did I do that and fall madly in love with this guy? Completely stuck me every bloody time. It doesn't work.
Now, you've got a homosexual son. How did yours turn out? Ask Paul the question.
Oh, no, how did it turn out?
He dresses well.
Oh, I got it.
Because I'm not because I need also everything. I have a protective mother. Now, I just wanted to ask Paul, do parents ever shunt their kids off to Exodus when their kid is
I was handballed at a young age myself. I was up in Sydney having a fabulous time. And
they ruined it for you?
They completely stuffed that up for a bit. And then I came back and my mother had, and I got this anonymous letter and whatever. I eventually came back to Melbourne anyway. It was through my mother's influence, and she was kind of in the background there. And for me, initially, it was, all these people are the same. You know, they're Christians, and they've got this kind of, and they know that it's wrong and terrible, but there's an answer there. And all the books, the books are very convincing. And at that age, in my early 20s, it was very impressionable. And that's one of the problems. Now, they do get people in quite young, when they're quite vulnerable, when they're quite depressed. But unfortunately, after a few months, after a year, after 2 years of this intense, fundamental, deep conflict, which is so painful and so traumatic, people often, as I said before, I think a fundamental contributor to a lot of suicides. You can't exist with that sort of intense conflict inside of you for long.
There's a statistic that says about 20% of suicides are actually gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and a lot of it is the influence of society. If your parents have brought you up in the fundamentalist church, you try and do what, we're all pretty good kids, we try and do what our parents tell us, then we find this other love, and it's a basic love. I mean, love is a basic need that we all have, so we find it with someone of our own sex. It's not. Jesus had 12 men following him around for 3 years. They don't talk about the women, but there were women there too. And many of the disciples were actually women. But this guy walked around with
his mother till he was 30. Wore dresses.
Isn't it also
nice frocks?
Like, isn't it quite also during that time of history, which is only we can all just read about and don't really know or won't ever really know, but wasn't homosexuality much more acceptable than it is now?
Yeah.
It was a much easier way of life. So, of course, Jesus would have said things that, or that are now taken out of context and put into this
The greatest
context.
sin in those days was not homosexuality or anything else. The greatest sin was the lack of hospitality.
Yep.
And that was the greatest sin.
Sodom and Gomorrah, and I didn't even know that till recently.
Yes.
One of the best books on the subject, I think, is Bishop Spong's Living in Sin. It's quite brilliant. It sort of goes into all that stuff and the interpretation of the ancient Greek, and everyone stuffed it up. And the Bible we've got now is actually, there's so much of it's actually quite inaccurate.
So you actually think it's better than Marx and Engels' position of opium of the masses? Because I actually think you're all losers, seriously. I cannot believe that I'm happy if you're happy. Don't get me wrong. You have the right
Who are
to
you
believe.
trying to please all of a sudden?
No. I just can't believe you need to hang on to something. Spirituality. What is spirituality?
For me, it came, right, and asking that question is exactly what happened. When I was 18, I was Italian, Catholic and gay. Right, those three do not normally go together, and they didn't. So I'd been doing my Kung Fu for 3 or 4 years, sort of quite in depth, and at 18 I had a spirit guide called Wong, and I said, what do I effing well do about this? Like, I'm obviously gay, that's my feeling. I don't look or sound or appear gay, so I could get away with it, and no one would know. But I'd also met people who, like at 40, were saying, oh, well, I've come out of the closet now, I've left my wife and I'm married with a guy. And I think, you're just gutless. You've hidden behind someone for 20 years and you fucked up their life. And I feel really sorry for you've used someone. I feel glad that you've come out, but I'm not going to go down there. So at 18, the question was, what the hell do I do about this thing about being gay and having this intense Christianity as background, like trying to be true to all this, the inner spirit of Christ, but it came with all this baggage. And the answer that came internally was from a spirit guardian, Wong, above and beyond all else, spirituality is honesty and integrity with yourself. And my exact thought was, oh, fuck, means I've got to do something about it now. But I knew that was the right answer, that effectively honouring what you know to be true about you. And it's not about being, like as you said, it's about love. It's not about being slutty. It's not about being crazy. It's not about all the gay trappings like the Mardi Gras and the image. It's about essentially being who you are and honouring that. And somehow either God and the whole universe put that together, or it's a complete botch up and you might as well do what you want anyway.
Do you all agree with that? Dave?
Parts of it. It's the concept of God that we're in some sort of cosmic scoreboard, and if we're good and bad, what's going to happen to us at the end. Christianity is basically such a linear religion. Eternity existed, you didn't exist, you're born, you live this corporal existence, you die. 2 choices, heaven and hell, and that's it.
Purgatory.
It's just such a linear existence.
Yeah, it does sound fun.
For the bisexuals.
In 1966.
And it lacks the fundamentals of the spirituality that people keep talking about.
Right.
Which is ultimately their own.
The indigenous people of this country, in their own religious beliefs, had what they call being in the dream time, leaving the dream time, joining the corporal ward and returning to the dream time. They even had it better than we did.
Yeah.
And I reflect on what you said about Thailand. One of the things I found when I went to Thailand was here is a people that were spiritual, yet were able to go about their daily duties and things and these sorts of things. I spent much time there. Who are spiritual.
Listen, we better go. I'm sorry, this is blah, 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 religion and other. We're out of here. But before we do, we can't even tell the story about the chocolate. So quickly open that Easter egg. We'll bring this up some other time. But Nan, your poem, your little Christian poem. This one you
Because I'm a mother, I'm always prepared. And it says, if you touch the heart, you'll reach the mind. If you lift the spirit, you'll raise the consciousness. And if you make a difference with one, you'll inspire many.
Thanks. I'd like to thank all guests for being here. The Weird Practic Christians, the MCC takeover, the Weirdo Exodus, fundamentalists, the fundamentalists, Drew, of course, and the whole Christians, blah, blah, blah. We're at the Peel Hotel.
Oh,
we're
yeah,
in Shopland.
blessed be the Lord. Yeah.
Oh, shut
You give
up.
me the money, I'll be anything. You've got to pay my bar bill.
Yeah, we'll pay the bar bill. Don't worry about it. This program is proudly brought to you by the Peel Dance Bar, corner of Peel and Wellington Streets, Collingwood.